Welcome back, everyone. Another weekend recap. I'm not pumped for this one, Travis. I know you are. Should we get started?
Let's get going.
Welcome back to the Sports Trigger, everyone. Travis, I'm going to label it a weekend of misery for me for several reasons. One, I got to see how bad Michigan is compared to Penn State.
Right.
With the absolute drubbing. You know, I had a slight moment, a slither of hope when they cut it to 14-13. I thought, okay, like the defense looked like they were starting to settle in a little bit. With regards to some of the misdirection plays. And then Penn State answered right away, 21-13. I kind of knew it was done there because the offense wasn't going to keep scoring. So that was terrible. That was a rough Saturday night. But also just betting-wise, too. For college football, Saturday I did not do so hot. And
it was pretty tough.
Let's just start out. Obviously, we had Michigan and Penn State. I'm already trying to forget the game. That was a run. You're Notre Dame, though.
Yes.
You know, I am going to say this caveat. I don't think USC was that good to begin with. But But regardless, they did drub them. So they did what I think. I didn't expect it to be that bad, but I did expect Notre Dame to win. So it made it look a lot better the way they beat them. What are your thoughts?
Right. Yeah, I definitely expected it to be kind of a back and forth game, if you will. You know, obviously USC's offense has been off and on, more so off this year, and their defense is okay, maybe at best. But, you know, I definitely didn't expect a 35-point win. You know, at the end of the first half, they were up 28-0 going into halftime, and I could have gone to bed because I was very confident they were going to end up winning, and I haven't felt that way about Notre Dame game. I can't tell you in how long. I mean, especially against a rival game, especially against USC, it was something else to behold for sure.
I think you could have gone to bed at the end of the first quarter. You know what? My biggest pet peeve of this though is so USC gets beat. It was at Notre Dame, right?
Right.
Drubbed. Absolutely looks terrible. They dropped from 11th to 21st. They remain in the rankings. And Michigan got drubbed. I get it. But it was at Penn State, the number 2 team, who's ranked even higher than Notre Dame, and Michigan falls out. I don't get that. Now, at the same time, though, I will say, the way Michigan's played this year, I don't think they deserve to be a top 25 team right now. Maybe they'll get it together at the end of the year. I think they'll probably end up with 9 wins on the year. Maybe best case scenario 10.
Wishful thinking.
They have a tough schedule left because I think they'll be fine against Wisconsin's more. They run an offense more to their tailored to what their defense can play against, and just in general they always play better against those type of teams. Younger defense too, and we're really good against run outside of Barkley because apparently Barkley can do whatever he wants. Very impressive showing by him. But Ohio State game scares me once again, even though it's at home this year. So 9 games, hopefully. But I don't know what the fan affair love is with USC. It happens every year, it seems like, and I don't get it. I mean, the Pac-12's in a tough situation, right? Because who from their team now, like their divisions looked at so poorly. I don't think they have a shot at getting a top 4 team in.
No, I definitely think they're out. And I think if anything you have to look at, now that everyone's actually lost a game, you have to look and see, okay, who was the best teams out of conference win, and I'm sure it wasn't good. I don't know off the top of my head, to be truthfully honest, but I could care less because I think that the Pac-12's done. I don't see them being able to get a shot. I mean, it'd have to be absolute chaos. Like, there would have to be so many things happen to where they even had a shot of making it. And I think, to me, the only team that really have a shot would be Stanford at this point. And that's why I'm saying absolute chaos, because if Stanford went undefeated, this is just absolute chaos theory. If Stanford went undefeated the rest of the way, obviously winning the Pac-12, en route to obviously beating Notre Dame as well, which would be a top win. That would be the only way, but honestly, I think it's a lot more likely that 2 SEC teams make it than a Pac-12 team makes it at this point.
Yeah, I just don't see it happening. There's so many other teams out there. I mean, Big Ten could go into the championship game with 2 teams undefeated. SEC, same thing. And then now you got Notre Dame making a charge up, who still has a very brutal schedule, but if they get through that schedule, they'll be fine. Then obviously Clemson with 1 loss, they would get a nod ahead of any Pac-12 team who has 1 loss or 2, especially. Oklahoma, here's 2 games. Last week when we were making our picks, I said it was interesting that Oklahoma was favored by so much because all their games have been close. So that one played out kind of how I expected, outside of they kept running Wildcat on 4th and 1. And Kansas State absolutely dominated that. And I even sent you a text saying, like, why the heck do they keep, and maybe fairer words than that, running the Wildcat, blah, 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 blah. But I expected more out of Kentucky, and they got blown out. Absolutely blown out. What are your thoughts on that game? I thought that was a game that Kentucky could show that, they were making some steps towards progress in the SEC.
And yes, it was at Mississippi State, but at the same time, Kentucky's only lost 1 game. Granted, you could obviously argue they shouldn't have lost that. They totally blew it against Florida, but you thought they were a little bit on the trend up. Not a great team, but a pretty solid SEC team. And then, just getting drubbed, like you said, against Mississippi State, a team that, they played 2 great teams the past couple weeks in Auburn and Georgia, getting absolutely destroyed. But I believe both of those games were at Georgia and Auburn. But at the same time, if you want to be on the upward trend, and they had been, I don't understand how you get beat down like they did against Mississippi State. That just shows that you're still not ready yet. It still shows that your program's still slowly, I will say they're slowly progressing, but, it's kind of like, okay, let's take a step back. They're not as good as they could have been, or they are, just take a step back, and they're still gonna be a couple more years.
Hey, they're better than Arkansas right now, right? Right. Arkansas is absolute trash. Tennessee's absolutely trash. So, Vanderbilt's had a terrible run, so that's not going to get you in the news. So, fortunately, Kentucky a lot of SEC East teams and bottom half SEC West teams kind of float by each week because you have the top heavy teams getting talked about. Think about this. Alabama and Georgia could play each other for the next 5 to 6 years, unless you get a better coaching change over there in the SEC East. I don't see any team over there unless you have a new coach come in and take the Tennessee job. I guess it's in South Carolina on the east side, so I guess I could see South Carolina could potentially. I don't know if I have much faith in Muschamp, but they could potentially vie in there and be tough. And then who knows what new coach Florida might end up getting. So there's some variables still left there, but recruiting, everything points to Georgia v. Alabama for the next few years at least. That's interesting. And that's, you start to think of who's going to be able to take on Bama and kind of take over an SEC lead. Georgia could. It's going to take a few years. But
it's the same template. It's the same template just because, Kirby Smart obviously came from Saban, and it's been pointed out that, it's the same model, great defense, really good running, and your quarterback does enough to get the job done. And I'm glad you brought up that point about that division, that side being Georgia's side of the division too, is the Georgia-Florida game this next weekend. I'm very interested to see, because I know Georgia has some crazy losing streak against them, being Florida. So I have no doubt they're going to win, but I want to see by how much they're going to win against, Florida, because I think that will tell the tale of, that's going to set a precedent for Georgia, because Florida's been the team that's won the division, at least 2 years in a row, if not 3. And so if Georgia just goes in and beats them down, that's sending a message saying, hey, we're taking over this side of the division. We're going to be normal team in the SEC championship. So you're going to have to go through Athens, Georgia, if you want to get to the SEC championship game.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm a little leery of this because this is a huge game for Florida. So, their coach is all getting them pumped up, saying like, okay, this is a huge game that can kind of turn the season for a little better than what it's been. If Georgia pounds them down this weekend, which I think it'll be closer, like 10 points or so, maybe more. I don't know. Georgia's been so much more impressive, and to be honest, like the smart money here would be well over I think the current line's at 14 or something like that. Smart money would probably be on the over just because Georgia's been so dominant, and Florida has been just that bad
right
all year, really. But I think if that happens, then it's kind of a statement, and it's just like, and probably a year early. I mean, I thought Georgia was going to be good this year, but I didn't expect them to be this good. So
especially their defense. Not that we didn't expect them to be good, but to be this dominant. Obviously they had Chubb and Michelle coming back. Then they had that really top-rated running back. I believe it's Swift. Coming in. So obviously expected the run game to be solid and the defense to be pretty good, but to be this good and then for Fromm to step in like he has for Eason, and now he's taken that starting job. So who knows if Eason will end up transferring or not after this year, because Fromm's been very solid.
Most SEC quarterbacks tend to transfer pretty quick.
All Alabama.
Alabama loses a few.
Right.
I mean, obviously Texas A&M, even though some of that started when they were in the Big 12, have had a lot of QBs leave them, and so I think that's kind of a trend just with the SEC in general. If they don't get a play, then they're gone. So, I don't know. Interesting weekend of football. Very disappointing on my end, but it's setting up for an interesting stretch run here. So. With that being said, guys, thanks for joining us on another episode at the Sports Trigger, and until next time.